When sales and marketing come together, usually there's plenty of fights. And when there is a fight, there's no better city to be in than right here in Las Vegas. For today's episode of CMS Connected, we are going to be in Vegas for the 404 conference where we tackle sales versus marketing. Welcome in, everybody, to the CMS Connected show here at the Mirage in Las Vegas at the 404 conference. 3-day event, final day. It's a good thing we can't quite see you in the audience right now because I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of dark circles under the eyes, flushed out just a little bit, and I'm actually shocked how many people woke up and ready to roll. I love it. Absolutely love it. Great to see it, folks. So, for those of you that do not know, the CMS Connected show is the web content management industry's only news commentary show. I'm your host, Tyler Pyburn. We're usually joined by Scott Lewer, who was the opening keynote yesterday morning. He actually went home because he's a Giants Cubs fan. So if you happen to catch him in the lobby just the other night, you would understand that you might have been wet and covered in champagne because he was also celebrating quite a bit. So he went home to go enjoy the parade and have some fun. He's not in Chicago, but he wanted to go have some fun. So today's show is going to be a little bit different than what we typically do. We won't be having our news segment. It's actually going to be more of a discussion and a debate. And for those of you here in the US, you might be a little bit debated out at this point. I apologize for that. But we will have some fun. Our topic today is all about sales versus marketing. And really, how can we get sales and marketing on the same page together? So that's really kind of the topic of discussion today. Now, to give you a little bit of insight as to who we're going to be talking to, we have our wonderful panelists that are going to be debating, duking it out, hopefully, and not become a love fest, guys. Have a feeling that's probably what's going to end up happening, but I'll be here to try to get under everybody's skin. So it's the way it happens. So to my right, we have Keith Durrant, CEO of eCentercarts, as well as Michael Kinkaid, the CTO there as well. To my left, we also have Vince Mayfield, CEO of BitWizards, as well as Bruce Williams, Senior Director of Development, at Thunder Tech. So great to have these guys here for today's show. And CMS Connected is actually brought to you by a great sponsor that put this on, so we have to say thank you to that. Falcon Software, with offices in Dallas, Philadelphia, Seattle, Toronto, Victoria. Digital experience agency Falcon Software provides solutions for all your creative design, content management, e-commerce, CRM, and digital marketing needs. Basically, you say marketing as a whole and web, WCM. They do it all. So big thanks for those guys for putting it on. And we also, just so you know, we're going to be kind of setting this up in two ways, really. We're going to kind of pose the problem as to what's going on in our first segment. Our second segment is actually going to be more, what are the solutions? How do we solve this? How do we come together? And not necessarily from a 30,000-foot view, but really on the boots on the ground if they have different locations. So that's really what we're going to be trying to kind of solve it. Give some real-life case studies from each one of these guys to explain how we can get sales and marketing on the same page, because everybody has that issue. We want them to work together. How do we actually do that? That's the big question, right? The million-dollar question that everybody wants to be answered. So, without further ado, let's kind of get into round one, if you will, of the debate, and also encourage everybody in the audience to, if you have a question, we are going to have a Q&A at the end of the show for about 10 minutes or so. Feel free to raise your hand. We'll have a microphone, but if you have a question also throughout the show, we'll probably hold them towards the end, but feel free to submit them using Slido, basically, SLI.do, and use 7909, and feel free to submit your question. I'll have it on my iPad right here, so feel free to submit the question, and we'll be getting to those towards the end of the show. So it should be a great time. And let's have some fun. So the very first thing we want to talk about is leads in general. So when we're looking at the problem that's going on in the world, sales and marketing both have their own kind of ways of defining a lead. How do you define the lead? What is a lead for most folks? Is it warm? Is it hot? Is it cold? What is a lead at this point in time? So I want to start off from a marketing perspective. How do we define the lead? Keith, I'll start with you. And if you could grab the microphone, we'll go right from there.
I think marketing would define the lead as someone with a pulse. So I think it often depends on what the product or service is that's being sold, but a lead from a marketing qualified lead is usually someone who has expressed an interest in what's being offered.
Do you agree?
I always agree with Keith. I think
You have to. You get paid to
yeah, I have
agree
to.
with it.
I think that because we're being oppositional, marketing obviously define a lead in the correct way, whereas sales have, we way to go to be able to get there. But yeah, marketing, looking at the top of funnel, middle of funnel, really it's at that point, as Keith said, where they get to a marketing qualified lead. I think the important thing though is that, that's going to be probably different based on your product or service as to what are those sort of attributes and behaviors that really make somebody a marketing qualified lead. And importantly, so we'll get into it, that whole idea of sales and marketing working together and actually being aligned on those definitions, is critically important.
What do you think about that, Vince?
Well, I don't think we're that far apart. I mean, I think a pulse is a good thing that everybody needs to have. But I think from a sales perspective, we want to have conversations. And oftentimes when you're selling professional services, customers think they know what they want, but it requires a conversation to kind of get down to, and a little bit of education to get down to where they actually need to be. So for me, I want somebody that has a need and wants to pay to have somebody do that service. And so I really don't think we're that far apart.
Well, what about you, Bruce? Do you agree?
The safe answer is the BANT. Budget, authority, need, and timing, right? Is that the tried and true? But yeah, I mean, I agree with Vince. It's let me talk to you. If it comes in and there's a expressed interest, let's talk. And you never know where it'll go. And I think as sales go, you believe that you can make the sale or solve the problem, no matter what it may be. And it also depends, like Keith said, what you're offering, right? And if it's business to business, business to consumer, it's a little bit of different approach, but yeah, I agree with everything they've said.
So when we're talking about this, I mean, I want to focus on the kind of the content automation part because that's something that everybody's looking at. For me personally, I've had the joy, sometimes not the joy, of working with hands-on, kind of boots on the ground with things like Marketo, ExactTarget, and HubSpot, kind of some of the bigger players. And some of the things I've found is you almost wonder at what point do we actually let sales get involved? That to me is kind of one of the tough things. We say, okay, we're creating all this content, we're walking people through the journey. The journey is something we hear about so much at this point in time. What point from a marketing perspective do you think sales should actually get involved?
I think it's a good idea to bring them in as early as possible. Like, you've got to realize that sales are dealing with people face to face, over the phone. They're having discussions. They understand really what the queries are, the concerns are, what the strategies are to express the value proposition to be able to get a sale. So, marketing can't really work in isolation when they're doing things like content marketing and strategy. You want to be able to discuss with sales, get their input, see what really will work there. So I think there's value in bringing sales in earlier. Never mind when you're actually going to hand it off to them. I think there's also obviously an evolution of roles, whereas there might be things that sales can do directly within certain channels, like be involved in social media. There's stats from IBM that if you have leads developed over sort of like a trusted relationship with salespeople over social media, they're 7 times more likely to convert. So again, they're good on that one-to-one. So there is a role evolution there for sales rather than just being there by a phone.
Do you think, Bruce, that sales should be brought in early? I mean, one thing I will say, having gone through that process, to me, when you bring sales in really early, think of not necessarily maybe a technology company, but think of just a standard small product, water bottles. Not you're selling water to grocery stores or things like that. What I found is that the sales team almost became aggravated bringing in too early because they felt they're not in the process yet. They don't understand what they want. They don't understand what they need. What do you think about that? Do you think it should be earlier?
Right, and I think it comes down to time, right? Time and resources, and I think salespeople don't want to be chasing, on wild goose chases, right? Be like, okay, well, marketing thinks this is a great account to get in, and you spend 2 months and it's nothing, right? It turns out to be nothing. So I think there's a lot to be said also for sales being too close to the situation, or maybe the motivations between each, where marketing wants to go more educational and let's work with these campaigns we have, and sometimes they see sales as a roadblock to some of the campaigns they have. So there's time and resources all kind of woven into it. So I think bringing in sales, I think early to at least have the conversations and set up the ground rules of when to bring in sales is what you have to do.
Well, I think that's probably it. Reiki, I'll kind of turn to you on this one. It's about the kind of communication beforehand, not necessarily reaching out to folks, right? So Keith, what do you think? Is it the communication kind of setting up, hey, this is the campaign, here's what we're running, here's how things are kind of trending, here's when I need you to come into play? Or is it truly, now we kind of want you involved in that conversation beforehand?
Yeah, I think it's on multiple levels. I think really, first of all, you need to get a strategic alignment between sales and marketing and what KPIs they're working to together as opposed to separate KPIs. So if sales is very short-term focused because they're trying to meet, quarterly or monthly sales targets, they're going to be less inclined to give marketing attention because marketing is often focused on mid to longer term engagement. So I think it's how do you find alignment between those two groups so that they're being evaluated on metrics that make sense to the company as a whole versus sort of departmentally.
Yeah, what do you think about that, Vince?
Well, I think there's an illusion among people in sales and marketing that they can control the sales process, and you can't. I think it's the customer that gets to decide, not us, when it's time to engage. A long time ago, it used to be that we had more control, but now in the new digital economy, that's just not the case. I mean, they're going to go out to the website, they're going to do their homework, they're going to become a more informed buyer. And for us to go and interrupt the process, before they're ready, I think is an intrusion. And I think that you can be over-aggressive and chase away your customer. So I really think that it's the customer that controls that. And, sales and marketing have to work together to understand where that typical inflection point is. And once they understand that, they can kind of get a better grasp on where the pipeline is going and what steps they want to do next. I think what marketing automation brings to it is the ability to have insight into what the customer is doing. And by understanding what the customer is doing, you can kind of tailor to try to help bring them the horse to water so you can get them to drink.
So I want to kind of stick with you on that. You mentioned the technology side of it, right? The automation part. The one thing in my experience, it could be single, but I've kind of seen it at a few different companies now. The marketing automation part of it seems like sometimes the sales teams are a little apprehensive with it. Is marketing automation, we want it to be a friend, right? We want it to be a friend. Everybody wants marketing automation to be the friend. But sometimes the sales team looks at it as the foe, right? They look at it, they're a little standoffish with it. Why is that, do you think?
I think it's because it's new, and I think it's about they still want to have control of the process, but it's really a friend. It's a friend, and it's a way to nurture the customer, to get them to be at a point where they're at a point, where they are actually ready to buy. And I think it's just a matter of time before they kind of come on board, and I think the way that works is by working together. If you work together between marketing and sales, they really should be one. I think you're going to be more effective, and I just think that's where it's at now.
Keith, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I think if sales is involved in defining the marketing automation programs so that it fits how they see the closing the sales cycle happens, then they have more engagement in it and will be more supportive of it. I think when marketing implements it and then all of a sudden, leads are flowing through to sales with not a lot of context about why they're there or how they got there, that's where sort of problems start to happen.
Michael, you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, I agree with Keith. I think, the issue
He's doing good. He's earning that paycheck today.
Issue for sales, possibly with marketing automation, is you have this weird autonomous beast that sends you over so many different apparent leads. And if there's not really an alignment there between marketing and sales as to what that criteria is, then they're going to get stressed by the fact that they're being expected to act on what they really think are not well-qualified leads. So they both have to agree on that so that they feel confident that what they're being sent by this automated system is worth acting on.
And that's one thing to kind of note. I remember in one case, this is kind of sharing a personal story. I remember the marketing team, I've always been on kind of the content creation, content development team, but the marketing team underneath this one company's umbrella, they had purchased said content automation piece. there was kind of no talk. They basically just kind of told sales that this is going to solve all your problems. You're going to know everything that you need to know about your leads, right? You're going to know what businesses they're in. We're going to know more about their IP addresses than ever. I mean, that's what they were literally telling them. And I'm sitting there like, I don't think that's how it works, but good luck to you. How can, starting from the top, how can marketing do a better job at explaining and telling them what exactly content automation, how this will help them? I guess you should go.
Yeah, Skynet is not coming to take your job, right? They're not going to take over. I think when we talk to our clients about automation, it's really more of being able to maintain that top of mind awareness throughout a long sales cycle, right? And then also offering helpful tactics for a salesperson that may be strapped with 100 accounts, right? To be able to apply certain content strategy passively without a lot of engagement. And it's, I think we've all seen those robo emails, right? Hey, checking in. Hi, Bruce, and it's lowercase Bruce, or whatever I input on a contact form. It's, so those are where you can sabotage the relationship if you automate too much.
What do you think about that, just as far as the relationship is concerned? Because where's the pitfall, I guess, in this relationship, really?
Well, I think the pitfall is the same pitfall that you have across all relationships within an organization. And I think what it really comes down to is really understanding that you're working for a greater mission together. Understanding the overall business strategy that you want to execute. And if you can get everybody aligned on that, then they can go and they can do their individual jobs within the department. But I think if you really want to get marketing and sales on board with marketing automation, first of all, you're never going to take the human element out of it. If anybody thinks that you're going to come in with the next silver bullet, I've been in the industry for a long time, and there's always the next silver bullet that's just going to solve all the woes. It's never going to take out the people factor. It's kind of like them telling us that we're going to have drones fly all the airplanes these days. I mean, it's just not going to happen. And so what you've got to do is get people on board early and let them understand what the vision is and what we're trying to accomplish together and have realistic expectations. I think where a lot of these systems, when they're implemented and they fail, it's a relationship failure, and it's a failure to set expectations and vision about where you're going to go.
Talk about that.
Well, I think it's also maybe we're guilty of it a little bit, overselling what the promise of marketing automation is. So I think sometimes we see, there's great promise, but it's complicated to do well, and it requires a pretty significant investment if you want to be successful in it. If you look at case studies around it, though, the companies that do make the investment in marketing automation are seeing real bottom line gains against their competitors, but it's something you have to stick with it, and it won't be successful on day one.
I said we were going to hold kind of questions from the audience till the end, but you just hit on something, and it kind of directly relates to this question that we just received. So Trevor just actually said, what would you say is a minimum dedicated human time, as far as resources are concerned, needed to create and manage marketing automation? Many users have the tools but never actually use them. So this goes kind of right back to what you were saying as far as investing in not just, great, we've got this great platform, now what? No one has their hands on it. So put the human element. I'm curious to hear all four of you. I'll just start with you all the way over and kind of rattle through the human element time of it.
I suppose it depends on what features of marketing automation you're using, based on what your overall strategy is. Like, some of our clients are very heavy on content personalization, and that obviously takes a certain amount of time. Others are doing very heavy email marketing campaigns. So really, it's gonna be very dependent on what your go-to strategy is whenever you start. But yeah, you definitely want to have dedicated people, depending on the size of your business, that are actually going to put time towards this and be able to actually track and then, importantly, iterate on the results. So it's not something that you can just kind of set up and ignore. You're going to have to get that feedback and improve on that over time. But really, it's going to be dependent on your organization. Based on the capacity that you have, start with that and really think about what it is you'll get high gain results from. If that's going to be, first of all, content personalization. So we definitely, with our clients, see or try to get them to start off small if they're totally new to marketing automation, rather than turning on absolutely every single feature of whatever platform it is that they're actually using.
So is that kind of the integrate? You mentioned that's interesting, as opposed to turning on every feature and just hitting the go button. which is just an absolute nightmare if anybody's been through that before. Do you just kind of slowly roll it out in time? What do you think? We'll kind of keep going along that.
Yeah, it's always, start small, do something that's tangible, and, take baby steps, add new features or functionality, as you're ready to implement them. And that, I think, back to, was it Bruce that asked the question?
Trevor.
To Trevor's question is, make sure what you're doing. It's easy to hire a developer to do some work and hand it off to you. It's more challenging for you to maintain it once we're done. So we are always trying to advise our clients that, the real work begins after we hand you over the keys to the car, basically. So you really have to plan for it. How many resources? One too many.
So you mentioned one of the things we're all kind of marketing folks, sales folks. When you run your own business, right, you have to be a little bit of everything at that point in time. For the folks that aren't in this industry, so say take a health club, right? I'll just say a health club in particular. The CEO doesn't necessarily understand content automation, and she sees the checks going out. He or she sees the checks going out, and they say, well, I'm paying for all of these features right now. Why are they not all turned on? Why are they not being used? What do you say to them? Good luck with that one.
I'll call you back. No, that's a great point, because it's like you have the Rolls Royce sitting in the garage sometimes, but we're only going to do what's going to make an impact for the business, and I don't think you need to overreach into a feature set just for the sake of reaching into a feature set either, right? There's a lot of analytics. There's a lot of insight, and there's a lot of, I think, just a quick, hey, they jumped on this web page, alert the salespeople to call them, because this is kind of a deep page that insinuates a sale is about to happen, right? There's no need to rack your brain about trying to find a way to use a feature when it's not going to make an impact for your business.
Can I jump in on that?
Of course, absolutely.
I think it's, we're supposed to be opposites, but we're actually all talking the same.
Get up and fight him right now.
Where was I going to go with this now? It's data driven, right? Let the data drive the decisions that you're going to make going forward. So, start with a campaign, start with a campaign landing page, start with an email campaign, and test it. Test the crap out of it. Like, do multiple versions of it. Then you start to get an inventory. You start to get to see what type of things are resonating with your clients. Build upon those if you want to, start adding another step in the workflow because you feel that people are dropping out of the funnel somewhere. Like, let the data start to drive your decisions.
I think that's a good point, but I want to go back to a fundamental thing. If I've got somebody that knows nothing about the business that's asking me the question, I said, first thing is that I want to frame up and make sure that they've got proper expectations. We all know that this takes time to do, but I would ask them, I would tell them, say, well, yeah, you bought this tool, but when you were a kid and you learned to ride a bike, you didn't just start riding the bike. There were baby steps that you took through to do that. When you learned to crawl, when you learned to walk, drive a car, fly a plane, whatever it might be, there are certain things that you do. You don't just turn it on all on at once. And it's the same thing here. And so, if you set expectations and set strategic wins that you're going to do at each point and over communicate with the customer, they get a better feeling. They don't feel like they're just writing a check and then waiting 6 or 9 months for some sort of results. So I think if it's properly planned up front with those baby steps going through and giving them that feedback and letting them know that you're going to have a better win in the long run with the customer.
Excellent. So I want to go back to kind of close out this segment. I want to go back to where we kind of started, and that's talking about the lead a little bit more. And one thing that comes to mind is the kind of lead scoring. We hear so much about this. I'm kind of curious to get your thoughts. We'll start from a sales perspective. I'll start with you, Vince. What are your thoughts on lead scoring versus kind of person-to-person sales qualification, or are they kind of one and the same sometimes?
Well, I think lead scoring is just a tool in our bag of tricks per se. I mean, it's just another thing that you use. I said before, I don't think you're ever going to take away human-to-human contact in sales, especially if you're talking about like the type of things that we sell, which are services, they're professional services, they're high relationship, they're high touch. If you've got more of a packaged offering, if you've got things that are a smaller, a commodity or that type of thing that are more of a volume play, you can set it up that way and you're going to be able to use lead scoring and a much more effective to get a salesperson and talk to them on the road or on the phone. But I think in the type of stuff that we do, again, it's in the customer's hands, and I think it's just another, the lead scoring tells us what they're doing and gives sales some strategic or tactical insight into what the customer's thinking about, what questions are being answered, or are they looking for. I mean, when a lead comes through, we're just happy that a lead came through, right?
I got an email address.
I mean, I'm just excited, so it's a good thing.
Excellent. What do you think, Michael?
Yeah, it's not a versus situation. Like, they're both tools that you can use, and they both follow each other quite well. So quite traditionally, you're lead scoring, you're identifying, qualified leads, you're passing it on to sales, and then it's sales that are picking up the phone and they're having, those conversations to really put forward the value proposition and drive home the close. So yeah, I don't think they have to be seen as versus.
Excellent. I think it seems like we've had another panel member join in from the audience because they're actually responding to Trevor's question. This is fantastic. I absolutely love this. So I want to read this answer real quick. For the question by Trevor, a strategy with the client, which is 3 months first and switch the most important features, then review it with the client and plan again. So that's kind of what the fifth member of the audience. I love it. Great stuff. So, all right, we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back here on CMS Connected.
So you've got a great website with hundreds, maybe even thousands of visitors. That's great, but each one has their own background, interests, motivations, and goals. But you are showing them all the same content. Not very clever. The solution is content personalization, allowing you to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time in the right form. So let's see how content personalization works.
With a state-of-the-art responsive front end and fully customizable user experience, commerce tools can be put to use with either .NET, Java, or PHP. Focus on what you want to sell. Let us handle the how, with an e-commerce technology enabling you to create engaging shopping experiences.
And welcome back to CMS Connected here in Las Vegas at the 404 conference. How is everybody doing here in the audience? Everybody having a good time this week? Great to hear. So we're having a great discussion up on stage right now, talking about marketing automation, and we're talking about marketing versus sales, marketing and sales, marketing with sales. How can they become buddies and not mortal enemies at times, right? So that we've got a great panel up here joining us right now. And what I want to do is I want to kind of shift the focus a little bit more and really more of the solutions to the common problems that we kind of talked about at first. So we kind of answered this question a little bit more, but from a marketing perspective, I want to touch on this again. From sales involvement with a campaign or content strategy, how vital really is it? I mean, we talked about that a little bit in the beginning, but from a campaign level, that's what I want. Not necessarily what process do we kind of introduce them, but a campaign level. The marketing team kind of puts together this great campaign. I'm just going to keep using a gym analogy, right? Because it's totally outside of this room. A marketing campaign that we're going to get all these people to lose 10 pounds. This is the campaign that we're running with right now. Now that would be great, especially after a week in Vegas. No question about that. But at what point do you get the sales team involved in with even the campaign portion? This is kind of an overall marketing question, not even just content automation. So Keith, I'll start with you on that.
Well, I think we're a big believer of getting sales in early, even if it's just a campaign. And I wouldn't call it just a campaign because campaigns are where leads come from. But to go back to Vince's point, it's really sales are the people that are talking to the customers. So they know what resonates with the customers, what they're going to need to help close a deal. And that surely is information that can inform a campaign. So I think if you bring sales in, understand how they talk to the customers, what they do to sort of nurture the lead along to get to close, that can only make better campaigns.
Do you guys, from a sales perspective, do you kind of agree with that? Or because one of the things I will say, having seen it, I think your sales directors and everybody wants to be involved in the campaign, but sometimes the boots on the ground, their mindset is, I just got to close a deal. right? I'm not thinking about this. How early does sales and the entire sales structure need to be in on it?
I think the successful salesperson today understands the value of marketing content, right? So I think everyone's starting to flow into that one mission, one team kind of mentality. So, I think you need to establish some kind of process of a regular review, and Vince mentioned over-communication, because these things happen so fast. These instances of this customer asked this question, well, it's going to get asked again. So find those little instances and have a workflow established between sales and marketing to bubble up and send over these question and answer situations that resonate, because voice of customer is everything.
Yeah, I think, we are still even here talking about when should these people be involved with these people, and we're keeping them in their silos. It's important to see that they've got a shared objective of revenue growth, and that really sales and marketing should be getting together and having a shared strategy, shared metrics, shared reporting. So as to when should sales be involved in a campaign, if they can bring value to the campaign, get them involved, but they should know what campaigns are coming up, because that campaign is going to drive leads that might have questions about missing information from that campaign or questions directly involved from that campaign. So really the two groups, they have to have better alignment and a better sort of shared understanding of what strategies are in place.
I'd like to add to that, because I think that there's also two other pieces. We're focusing very heavily on marketing and sales and their interaction. I understand that's the point, but I think there's a bigger picture here. I think that the engineers that actually work with the customers and the marketers that work with the customers, and at least in our business, have a lot of insight into what customers are wanting and talking about. And I think that needs to filter back up to the marketing and sales team as they develop the strategy. And I think also that it's really important that we go back and ask our customers, whether we talk to them face to face or whether we survey them on a regular basis to find out what their thoughts and insights are. And even if the other side of it too is that even if we don't make the sale, taking the time to go find out, why didn't we get the sale? Or if it's just like if you think back about Herman Cain, when he came in to take over Godfathers, he went out and he learned every job on the floor, right? So he could totally understand it. So I think we've got to look at it from a holistic perspective, not just marketing and sales, but a whole company, and then also the customer, who's the most important element.
Now, that's what they should be doing. Now, for the folks that are wondering, just going back to the resources question, right? How do we devote resources to that when we're thinking kind of the next sale, especially, go back to the gym again, right? They're not selling a $400,000 product, right? They're not selling something $500,000. They're selling something maybe, $50 a month, right? $100 a month. They're trying to go to the next sale as quick as possible and really kick them out as quickly as possible. What do we say to them as far as going back and revisit, why didn't you make that sale? Why didn't you close it? How much time do you devote to that in particular?
Well, I don't think there's a magic bullet or a magic number to that. I think it really depends on the customer, and I think that's what we get paid for, is coming up with those ideas that are going to help them gain that kind of insight within their budget and what they can afford. And if we look at it, going back holistically across their organization, the people that work in a gym, on the gym floor, understand the customers probably better than anybody. We want that feedback. And it's our job as servicing the customer to kind of tell them, hey, these are the things that you can do within your budget to get that kind of insight and get going in the right direction.
Excellent. So one of the things I want to kind of move on to right now is talking about metrics. So it's always the question, how deep, everybody throws big data out there. There's so many metrics available to us right now. What are the right metrics, right? I'm curious to know, what do you say? What are the metrics that you actually look at that you find valuable?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously going to be sort of very specific metrics for marketing and for sales as well. So like marketing, you're looking at, sort of visitor to lead conversion rates across all of their activities, like how many white papers were downloaded, what the traffic is like on the site. Sales are going to be having their own quotas, close rate, things like that. But there are some metrics that kind of go across both departments, such as close rate by channel, to actually be able to see how initiatives at marketing actually led to successful closures, or conversion assist as well, looking at your content and being able to see that in terms of how effective that was with actual closing out in sales. But again, really, that's, it's getting to the point of having the closed loop reporting where you can actually look at that data and see through the buyer journey actually what is happening in marketing and then what the impact of that is in sales. But that's, again, requires you to sort of, to connect your systems to be able to see that 360 view.
Bruce.
Yeah, it's funny between marketing and sales. Great year. We had a great sales year. Marketing did great. Oh, we had a down year. The sales team just can't close, right? So it's, the end of the day, it's sales, right? Revenue. Bring it in. And I think that's, as far as the people that sign the checks to those platforms and to those consultants, that's what they're looking for, right, at the end of the day. But there's also a lot to be said as far as, depending on the sales cycle and everything else, the audience. And it's very hard to connect the dots for marketing attribution to a sale, right? It's very hard. And I think some of these automation platforms close that, get closer to it with the insight. And as a salesperson, once you've got that lead and you're in that multiple touch points and you're taking it, then it's pretty much binary. Did you close it? Did you not? So, it's a number of things. I think, there's no magic metric that you have to keep your eye on.
I saw you shaking your head, Vince, as well.
Well, to Bruce's point, I'm a pilot, and so I'm looking at my instruments all the time and making micro, changes and adjustments. But overall, what's the most important is, did I land the airplane and is everybody safe? I mean, that's what matters. And so
you're here, so you've done a good job at that thus far.
Exactly. So for me, customer lifetime value, cost of acquisition, and revenue are probably the big macro ones that I care about. The other ones, the typical metrics between marketing and sales, I think that it varies based upon industry and what you're trying to sell. And I think what really is important that you have a continuous feedback loop, that you understand what those are and you adjust, and that you're, again, over communicating to everybody within the organization so that you can make those adjustments. I know that takes time, but over time as an organization, depending upon what you're selling, you're going to get better and better and better at it, right? And, to come back and blame one or the other, marketing or sales, at the end of the year, I'm like, come on, we're a team, right? And so now we got to go back and look at, what were the metrics that we had over the last year and how do we fix that? And also the question would be, were we looking at the right things in the middle of the year to kind of change that and make it a little bit different? If we don't do that, if we don't make those adjustments, if we're waiting to the end of the year to find out, then we're going to lose every time. It's too late. So we should be monitoring those metrics all the time. And in the end, did we land the plane is the most important thing.
Definitely. I think that's, I use it. I'm a guy, I love boats, love to be out at sea. So it's kind of those pivots, right? If you just let it keep going straight, you're going to crash into the rocks. But you have to continue to pivot along the way. You can't just kind of let it go forward. One of the things, because of given the show, the content management industry's only web commentary show, we talk about the platforms so much. So a lot of blame will come on the end users, and we talk about the return on investment. How is it possible for us to really kind of measure, when we're talking metrics, the return on, say, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 a month on a specific platform? Can we measure the return on a platform? This isn't totally off the script, but it's...
Possibly.
It's hard to do.
It's very hard to do, and it's hard to do often because of attribution, because you don't exactly know sometimes where the sales are coming from. So, like a real life scenario is we work for Shred-it. We're their digital agency of record. They do about $1 billion a year globally of paper shredding, which is pretty akin to gym memberships, to be honest. They're selling a very inexpensive service. And probably for the last 12 or 18 months, like one of the projects we've been working on with them is really trying to get that 360-degree view of a lead to a client. Because the challenge they were having is phone calls weren't attributed back to web, even though the original inquiry came through web. At some point, someone picked up a phone and called them, and one of when we built a responsive website, we saw this great increase in online form submissions on the web. But we heard talking to salespeople that people still like the phone, so we switched to click to call on the mobile device, and it had just an astronomical effect on conversion rates because people wanted to talk to a human being. When we did that, when we first went to click to call, though, we weren't attributing those phone calls back to web. So once we attributed them back, the ROI became, obviously better than it was before.
So what do you guys think?
Yeah, and I think the question is as far as personalization, perhaps, and I think everything happens. The speed of business is so just critical, and we used to think maybe, I don't know, maybe a light year ago, 3 years, right? Linear, right? But Vince mentioned it's the sales process is all over the place, and someone may stumble upon your site, and if we're talking the gym membership, right? You're probably a local brick and mortar gym, right? And so local SEO is very critical, and having a responsive site, and then also having the ability to personalize a message, like come in today for 10% off. So that's where a lot of the automation kicks in, and the power of it to be able to maintain a certain personalization without having to man the ship 24/7.
Excellent. So one of the things I want to move on to now is kind of case studies, and I'd like to you just gave a great one with Shredded. I would like to kind of continue on. Now, actually, I'll come right back to you. And we actually got a question from the audience as well that is about kind of really repairing the relationship with sales and marketing, because I think that's one of the things that marketing automation can help as well. You might be coming into a situation where it hasn't been working, and then all of a sudden it does work. How do you get it to work and get it back to everybody singing Kumbaya in a room together, right? That's what you really want. But the question is the case study, right? Can you give me an example? I love to kind of go around the room of something that it might not necessarily have been working, and how did it get repaired? Or have your companies all just been so great that you've never had that issue? Because if you say that, I'm kicking you off the stage because you're lying to me. So go ahead.
So, we rolled out, I guess this is a client of ours, manufacturer, and they have a pretty well-known brand, but their main business is the business-to-business as far as the dealers, distributors. So they have that, both a B2B and B2C kind of interest, and also want to maintain that brand throughout the channel. And there was always like that headbutting of who's high-fiving the CEO more, sales or marketing, right? Who does it's like, who's the favorite son over here, And literally they had 2 CRMs, one for sales and one for marketing. And it's still a struggle today to say, look, you guys have to give up, or at least come together, even as, a guidebook or a rule of engagement, right? So eventually we brought them together in the same room. Marketing decisions are made now with campaigns with the salesperson, the sales director in the meetings themselves, right? So one, you get great feedback, but you also get buy-in, because a campaign can't be effective without buy-in.
Vince, I'd love to hear a case study from you.
I don't know that there's necessarily a case study, but what I would say is that the biggest problem, and it's not just in sales and marketing, is that we quit seeing each other as people, right? And in today's electronic age, I think the big problem is that, and what gets people down in their silos is the fact that they focus on email and tweets and text and all those other things, and they get down into the minutia. And I think that one of the things that I found that can make a huge difference in mending, a relationship, with sales and marketing, for example, coming to a conference together like this, letting them go out and have a good time together, see each other as people again, and break down those barriers. Because I think that's what happens, is that people, they get locked into that. And if you go and you see teams that aren't functioning well, it's because they've put up silos. It's because they've put up barriers, and they identify with that group think. And I think in most cases what's happened is that they've lost the vision of the company and where the company's going. And that's why I think that culture is very important in companies, and what you cultivate and how you bring people together.
Yeah, I think there are strategies that you can do. If you have a sales team and they're on the phone, get somebody from marketing to join in on that call to listen in. Or if you don't have very hot leads, get them to maybe take a call, get them to understand what and have empathy for what it is that the other side is doing. Likewise, we've talked about this before, but get sales in early to see what's going on with the campaign or the content strategy and get an understanding as to what tools are in place, why they're in place, and what the expectations are there. And then hopefully, there will be more empathy between those two groups.
The kind of the $1 million question, again, we're going to turn it over to the audience as well, so I'd love for you guys to chime in. Again, use sli.do, and it's 7909 in order to kind of join. So feel free to submit a question over here. We're also going to be having a microphone come around we're going to be running out of time, I'm sure, shortly. But before we get to that, I kind of want to ask the $1 million question. I want to kind of really draw the line here. For marketing in particular, content automation, the platforms themselves, where do you want to see them go, Keith?
I think where they will go eventually is they will get smarter. This is technology that's really still in its infancy. So, and sometimes, when you implement it, it feels a little very heavy-handed, and it's back to your getting the robot email with "Hi, how you doing? You're my new best friend. I'm a robot." So I think when you can start building sort of, artificial intelligence into sort of the marketing automation that learns from what past behaviors have been and adjusts itself accordingly, I think that's where things are starting to go, but it's still very early days for that.
Michael?
Yeah, like you're seeing it now with solutions that are predictive first, or the machine learning approach, where really, and this can be. It could be a good thing, could be a pretty bad thing, we're yet to see, but you've got other companies like Epi acquiring Pirius, and there's really a movement there to try and move away from being this manual rules-based approach where you've got to constantly tweak and feed the machine to being, well, we're capturing all of this data, let's see whether or not we can actually use machine learning to actually present content, relevant content, timely, based on the actual activities of people on the various channels. But the concern is, again, you automate that, you lose that really refined human connection in terms of trying to actually present content that's meaningful. So we'll see how effective they are, but you're beginning to see them roll out now in the market, and companies begin to use it.
From a sales perspective, it's kind of same question. Where do you want to see the platform itself go?
Well, definitely the machine learning thing. I want to know what I don't know. I want it to help me provide insights that I don't have. But I think that even with having I want it to be easier, simpler to use, simpler to set up. I think that marketers want systems that just work and that they can understand and that work the way that they work. I want to see that improvement. But in the end, I go back to the thing that I don't think you're ever going to take the human element. I think the machine is going to give us insights, and I think it's up to a human being to kind of take those insights and decide what to do. I mean, people are complex, and although those automation systems are going to give us those insights, you have to decide how to act on them, and that comes back to the human element.
Bruce?
Yeah, and I think this is why you see so many connectors and extensions from CRM to ERP to any other inventory system that I think no one wants to be evil or sneaky in sales, right? Who wants to be the villain, right? No one wants to be the villain. You want to provide a better service overall, right? I want to help you solve a problem. So these platforms are going to continue to integrate with each other. I think someone put a great graphic up there about just the proliferation of these platforms. And I think there's got to be a bubble burst eventually. Some of these are going to be pruned away. And so the ones that'll maintain are the ones that can provide that artificial learning, predictive analysis, and also just give us humans that still walk around here and hopefully we'll beat the robots, a better advantage point to provide better service overall.
Didn't we open this up with saying Spynet's not coming to get us? I think you ended with it. That's the way that works. So I'd love to open it up to the audience for questions. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand. The microphone will come over to you. But we also as we wait for a first question, I know there's one of you in there. We will get to you right here in the up front. We have a question that came in via sly.do. This thing's pretty cool. But the question, you probably don't want to go into too much of your own numbers, but what percentage of revenue do each of you spend, respectively, on sales and marketing?
We're a digital agency, so I'm not sure it's relevant to what we spend. I think it's more what type of spend our clients are doing, who are, like Shreddit, who are selling services into the marketplace. But I don't have that off the top of my head, unfortunately.
Well, I feel like what is the metric? Is it like I think the standard is 10% of sales, right? And I think we're about that. And it's not. We're not spending a lot of money on, obviously I came here, so that's really nice. Thank you, ThunderTech. But it's more around content. It really is like education, right? It's not sales decks necessarily, but it's around a lot of pieces that we know the client will be better for. And since a lot of services now are pretty complex, so there's a lot of effort put into exactly explaining them the expectations of the service you provide.
I actually know mine. It's 8.5% on marketing, and I spend about 22% on my cost of sales. That's of gross revenue. It varies depending upon what things we do, but that's about where it sits for us.
Great, very great. So we've got a question from the audience right here.
That actually was my question on the slide.
Well, so you were anonymous. That was fantastic. That was perfect. Any other questions in the audience before we wrap up? We got one right all the way in the back. Let's see how fast she can run to get there.
So content assets are usually seen as expenses, right? And we see that organizations are spending money developing content assets used for both marketing and sales and expensing it rather than looking at it as a balance sheet investment in an intellectual property asset. And I wondered if in the clients you've been working with, you've noticed investment trends around investing in content marketing assets, content assets for delivery that are used really by sales, marketing, sometimes operations, being invested in a different way, or is it always just an expense that marketing is responsible for in their annual budgets?
Well, that's a good question. I think you hit actually something that's one of the fundamental challenges between sales and marketing is sales are typically revenue above the line and marketing is an expense below the line. And so it's like, sales, yay, we bring all the money in. Marketing, boo, we spend all the money. But we haven't seen, it's great what you're asking about, but no, I haven't seen any realignment on how people view those expenses.
I don't know necessarily about how they view the expenses or a particular trend, except the fact that I see, instead of producing large volumes of content, I see people more focused on quality content. Ann talked about it yesterday in her talk. For a long time there, people were just kind of throwing everything out there to see what would hit. But I think people have realized that consumers are savvy and they want quality content. The problem with quality content is it costs more to actually build and do, and it requires a lot more thought. And so I don't know what the exact number is, but I know that it does cost more to do.
Yeah, I just want to, Vince's point is bang on. We wish clients would spend more time and energy on quality content and less on volume. It's because it's the web and it's a relatively inexpensive publishing medium, there's often a tendency just to put stuff out there. And we love clients that come to us, especially on a website redesign, who say they want to launch a new site with a fraction of the amount of content on it. So I think, again, it's like, look at data, let data drive your decisions, do an audit of your existing site, look at what pages perform, what pages don't, and if there are pages that just don't get any views, like, just turf them.
We've got time for about one more question from the audience. Do we have anybody? right here in the center. She'll be right over to you.
There's a lot of talk about the sales and marketing, but I think we also need not to forget the developers and the technology behind it. Because in my opinion, we all talk another language, sales, marketing, and the tech people. And sometimes we need to sit in a room, throw a key away, and stay together till we be able to communicate with each other what we really want. But we build a lot of times not exactly what the marketeers want and the tools that they need to happen, what their needs are. So is that also your opinion, and do you have maybe like solutions, or how do you do that? Or?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Like looking at a case study of ours from last year where we worked on a new site, e-commerce site for a large B2B plastics manufacturing company. I think a lot of the success early on came from having the Scrum team in the same room with marketers and sales, and really for ideation to be formed around those three core teams. Because, you know, we had ideas as to features, marketing had ideas as to features, sales were able to come in and say, people don't struggle here, this is not the issue. If you could answer these 4 or 5 questions on the site, it's going to have a real big impact on us at sales. Even things like the actual overall strategy of the site changed thanks to the communication between those three groups, where they were able to identify between sales and marketing that there was really this group of buyers that were quite challenging. They took an awful lot of time from sales, and really sales wanted to focus on sort of those larger accounts, the ones that brought in a lot of value. So it changed the strategy of the site to, okay, let's actually focus in on the sort of the smaller buyers that have smaller orders, but they take up a lot of time. And then we as a development group were then like, okay, well, what features can we actually develop that will actually help inform these buyers, can answer the questions on the site so they're not always being driven to sales. So I think, you know, it's a great point. There's a lot of value in having that collaborative work between, you know, the implementation partner, the sales team, the marketing team. Let's meet and discuss what are the challenges and how best can we resolve those together.
So I come from a software engineering background, and one of the things I had to learn as a young developer is that technology is an enabler. People, the end user, the product that you're developing is to solve a business problem or perform some sort of a business function. Nobody cares if we wrote the greatest algorithm in the world or the coolest looking user interface or whatever. What they care about is, does it do the job that we need to get done? And that is where, the rubber meets the pavement. If you want to get everybody together and have a discussion and talk about, deep insights in terms of what do people want, what do you want to produce to solve a business problem, that's the key thing. But using, hey, I want MVC versus .NET, all that is white noise. Nobody cares. If you go talk to, we do some infrastructure stuff as well, and I tell my infrastructure engineers, I said, no business owner said I wanted to come in and own a bunch of computers. That's not why they got in business, right? Unless you're Michael Dell, that's a different story. But nobody wants to own a bunch of computers, and nobody wants to own a bunch of technologies. Technology is an enabler. It's a tool to get the job done. And if we keep that in perspective, then we're going to serve our customers a lot better.
Excellent stuff, guys. So a big thank you, Michael, Keith, Vince, Bruce, for taking time out of the day to join us on CMS Connected. Want to thank you, the audience, for posing some really great questions. Really thank you for that. And of course, a big thank you to our sponsor, Falcon Software, for really making this entire show happen, CMS Connected. And obviously, a big thank you to the 404 conference, because just a great show indeed, for sure. So without further ado, for all of our guests, I am Tyler Pyburn. Remember, get connected, stay connected, right here on CMS Connected. We'll see you guys next time.
So you've got a great website with hundreds, maybe even thousands of visitors. That's great, but each one has their own background, interests, motivations, and goals. But you are showing them all the same content. Not very clever. The solution is content personalization, allowing you to deliver the right message to the right person at the right time in the right form. So let's see how content personalization works.